Hello, and welcome to a fun episode of Future of XYZ, a meaningful one too. We're talking about the future of what's real. Super tiny topic, right, Annabelle?
So tiny, very overwhelming.
Very overwhelming. Well, Annabelle Schneider is joining us today as our guest. She's a Swiss born, New York City based experienced designer and artist. She holds graduate degrees in strategic design management from HSLU in Lucerne, Switzerland, as well as a master's in interior design from Parsons School of Design in New York City, where she also teaches now. She has a private design practice. She's worked with tons and tons of big brands and art and architecture, and we'll talk about some of that work. And as well, she was named in 2023 part of the Future 100 by Metropolis Magazine as one of the most promising designers in U.S. and Canada, which I would certainly agree with. And the work that is floating behind her, Breathe With Me, has received all sorts of international accolades, including the German Design Award most recently, honors from New York City by Design last year, the Interior Design Awards, as well as a nomination for the Swiss Design Prize in 2025. Annabelle, thanks so much for being with us on Future of XYZ today.
Thank you for having me. Very exciting.
Well, I mean, when we were discussing what we were going to talk about, because your work is quite large in breadth, as is your expertise and your vision, we got to this very fun and very, as we said, unambitious topic of what's real. So, just for the sake of context, how are we defining what's real in light of your expertise as well as what we want to achieve in today's conversation?
I feel reality is very much constructed, and I'm coming from a very much constructed background, like constructed environments and making spaces. And as more we're hyper connected digitally and super disconnected physically, I feel those physical constructed spaces and the moment of time, like the presence, becomes much more important to define what is real because it's very, very fragmented.
It's so interesting. I mean, as you mentioned, your background is highly structured. So you have this degree in strategic design management, but also interior design. It kind of makes you both a strategist in a way and experiential designer. How has this educational and professional background changed how you see what's real?
I think at the core of everything I'm doing is people. Like that was also the main motivation of why I went to strategic design management, because first I wanted to do architecture right away or illustration back then. And for me, it's really about how people connect. And I feel that's always happening the most realist in a physical space in the moment. It's like, and spaces are not alive without people creating stories in them. So I feel those moments are very important. And, design and art, or like just everything multisensorial that we consciously decide as designers to place in certain points, and also work with scale and sound and all these other signals, are influencing how we move through space. And I think that's the continuous moment. And strategic design management was very broad, and it
Yeah.
helps me till this day, like to understand the bigger scale, but also think about the future. That's why I'm also so interested in that topic and in your podcast and everything, because I think it's more important than ever that we're talking about where are we going in a super accelerated speed.
Well,
And then and
it's
the interior design brings it, to a grounded, hopefully grounded, more decision. Like I make a decision, I go to this space. Why? And I think in a time where we really like, we can have everything with the push on a bottom or even with Siri or something accessible to us. And there's a generation, they already grow up with like that. And I feel this is very dangerous
mm,
because you get it very much through an algorithm or through whatever app you want to have. So I think going to physical spaces is very, very important for us, for our health, for the way we connect, for the way we see reality
well, I want to get to
and
physical
feel.
spaces because you're creating a lot of them. But I'm curious, you've mentioned technology a few times. And we all know, I mean, AI is kind of everywhere. And both of us have like virtual backgrounds going on right now. But like, right? Like, so what's real exactly? But in this age of AI and just real technological acceleration that we've been living in, how has this altered your perspective on what's real? I mean, you talk about the people, and I want to come to that, but like, how do you perceive what's real these days?
I think the experience, you said I'm an experienced designer and I went with this term. I still go with this term, but I really think it's so much about the embodied presence and like really be physically there. And that's why I'm also working a lot with multisensorial design and really work with those layers in consciously choreographed points throughout the space, like, some scent, all this touch and like sound and frequencies, all these material things or like, bodily things that we cannot replicate in a very flat digital life. And I think AI makes everything perfect. I mean, that's we discussed, but very flat and very sleek and very like our backgrounds. I mean, it's like, yeah. And it's fine. It's a tool. But I think as a designer, we're much more, or us as people, we need to bring more meaning to life. We need to construct realities for the moment that actually makes sense. And we need to work with time because we're not digesting so much anymore when everything is so fast. And so like, here it is. Okay, great. Headline. Here it is. Great.
And
now
move on too.
yeah.
I
And
mean,
I also want to say I wrote down like, because when you asked me this question, I was really like, yeah, there's kind of a structure in that too. So I said, real is also embodiment. I feel it. And then it's experience. I was there. So I'm telling someone, or then the resonance is a very big topic. I feel like more and more in our time. So it moved me. And you have to explain that, like you have to give it time to actually feel something.
yeah.
And then I tell you, but for you, it might be different than for me. And then it's also the community validation. We experience this together and we're in this at this moment together. And that was something when I wrote down those things, like I was thinking about the blizzard in New York.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how the snow was a perfect example of this. People go out and all of a sudden we're connecting and we're taking time and we're not busy anymore at this moment. And we're creating these sculptures everywhere in New York, like snowman or whatever it was. And we are in this together and we look at each other and we're like, can you believe we're here? It's so beautiful and it's magical. And all of a sudden time slows down and it becomes still. And that was a perfect example, I feel.
Of embodied presence. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's interesting because in some ways it's really in the way you're describing it, this isn't about a rejection of technology or nostalgia. It's really about like humanity and what makes us unique, right? Or like what makes us human.
Yeah, 100%. I think technology is there to stay. I mean, it's so much engraved in our daily life. Like, just see how much addicted we are to the phones or something. And yeah, I'm not fighting it, but I ask for discernment and for spaces that really the massive contrast of like where somebody can be vulnerable, where somebody can be, things are imperfect, or we can actually feel safe and open up. And maybe it's becoming very much separated, but technology is a tool to achieve things and processes will change.
But when you think about this, like, so I mean, thinking about the technological advancements, I mean, and AI specifically, we're facing in 2026 some of the lowest levels of trust that we've ever had at a global level in information, right? In what is real, actually. There's been this hyper acceleration of technology over. I would argue that there is a total collective overstimulation in addition to the inability to discern real from not real. And there's this kind of low effort situation happening across the board that people are like so overwhelmed that they don't even want to like figure it out. So why does this embodied presence actually matter? Like what does this like why are you trying to do what you're doing?
Well, again, I'm not fighting the reality of overstimulation, that our nervous systems are fried and we're not able to connect anymore properly. There's a lot of like something is empty and something from this flatness lacks of depth, like not depth, but like depth. And I feel we all feel that, but it's very hard to put in place. And with my work, I try to create those literally bubbles that you can see also in the background that are breathing. They are very multisensorial, and they're not, the aim is not to take you out from the reality, like from the other world we're not navigating, but bring you back where time is stretched and, strangers become maybe more soft and you actually feel, you give yourself some time to emotionally just process. And I had a lot of experience where also very critical men, I showed it in a shopping mall in Uzbekistan, where it really was like, and people also asked me like, why don't you show this in an art museum, like in a museum or in a gallery or something? And I was like, no, then I target those people that are coming there. They already expect I'm going to see design or art or something.
Mhm.
I want to target everyone that also has no access to those things otherwise, but I want to see their reaction too. And in a shopping mall was such a paradox because it's really about reflecting of what do I actually consume. And those men, they went into there, they took pictures and they came back and they were asking me, so what do we do exactly? It's just this white bubble that's breathing and smelling and there's some sound. I'm like, yeah, well, it's also very soft. Go back and lie down and take your time. And then after 2 hours again, they came out and they gave me a big hug and they were like, wow, you know, you really made us think about life. And that's, I think, the shift of perspective, as it's really this moment of like, hold on. And, you know, also symbolically, I think we all need our bubbles where we can like, yeah, really go quickly sit down, sit with your feelings and not be impatient when something feels very crazy. This is life too. This is the life we're navigating. Like we have to sit with it, but also let it go through our body. And I think design can help a lot because it can be so multisensorial.
Well, I mean, I think that's actually a really interesting piece of this because historically, right, like it was either religion or mass media or institutions or just the collective somehow knowing that
Yeah.
what's real was clear. And today, obviously, it's hard to not only not know what's real, but certainly who gets to declare it so. And you talked about that again in terms of this, like, you know, artists and designers are kind of the reality framers if you think about this embodiment, experience, resonance, community validation that you talked about. But is there responsibility that you're arguing that design and designers have in this moment?
Yeah, I think they have to, you know, design is always like storytelling in a way. Also, art, like life is storytelling. Brands do the same. Like it's making meaning, making make sense of things that are in place. And I think we really have the responsibility to create more depth and that are more to the human and more for our well-being. Or like, you know, just yeah, connection, because the time we're also navigating right now is so much about disconnection. Same also with algorithms and the information we get from everywhere. Yeah, where is the source? Like, what is the source? And so polarizing. So I think it's very important to, or it's a, yeah, it's a huge responsibility from a designer or an artist or somebody that crafts a space where people actually should come, whether you're individual or you go as a community or you meet as a community, that you have this shared experience and it does something to you. And maybe you cannot really explain what it is, but you felt something. And then you take that and you're going out of this space and you keep on living. So you have your symbolic little bubble or something like that. Yeah.
You've talked before, Annabelle, about discernment, and discerning what's real. I find is a fascinating concept right now. I find discernment in general interesting. And the way that you framed it in terms of these spaces, which I want to talk about in a minute, is about kind of like nervous system safety, which I think, you know, I'm pretty well informed on trauma, and trauma has a lot to do with nervous system regulation. And what you're arguing is that in these hyper kind of overstimulated places where the nervous system isn't necessarily like calibrated and we're not in touch with our humanity, right? And our feelings, we're not well positioned to discern what's real from what's not. Is that part of what you're trying to do with your work as well, in this kind of idea of embodied presence?
100%. It's really like, also, first of all, like, as I said before, it's soft space. It's very organic spaces on purpose. Everything I did also before that project was very always soft, organic, kind of related to beds or pillows or things like that. Something that also brings you back to a very sheltered space, like in the bed or as a kid, you know, when you made like things with your blankets or something, you feel safe. So I think safe spaces in a way, and design again, like organic shapes are like hawks, or like people also told me like it's like a womb or like, you know, the roots of something. So I think the shapes, the materials, the sounds, like I have on purpose low frequency sounds that are, you know, it's not spa music, but it's also journeys of like also dramatic, but on purpose, because you should feel that presence and that it's really like changing, like emotions change too, or life. It's not always just still. And yeah, I think that has and the aspect of slowing time, and there's no require. I'm not saying you have to feel that or this is reality. You should find your own reality, but I give you the space for it.
Yeah.
And you should think about this like while you have a decluttered space right now. It's you also put your phone away at some point because you realize, and I observed that many times, I realized that, yeah, they took some pictures, which is completely fine. And we talked about that too when we're talking about all these design weeks or installations all over the place, and you see them on Instagram or whatever. And I'm myself looking at them, of course. I'm like, yeah, great. I saw that. It's fine. I don't have to go. But my goal, or I think also the future, is really about creating more those spaces where you cannot really depict how it is unless you have been there with your full body, because you need to give yourself time. And also with the discernment, you need to give yourself time to critically evaluate that, what you're having in front of you.
I love that. Let's talk about this. Breathe with me. You had prior to that done a earlier work called Being in Bed, which you showed both during New York City Design Week and Swab Barcelona and Alcova during Art Basel Miami. And that's when we first met, which was this kind of VR bed inflatable thing that was quite small, but like blew, like, not to like mix metaphors, but blew up. It really did. It took on a life of its own. And the next year you introduced Breathe With Me, which debuted at New York City by Design and has, as you mentioned, it was in a mall in Uzbekistan, but it's been in Barcelona and Tashkent and Dubai and Toronto and Basel and all sorts of other places. But both of these installations, and I know the one I want to talk about also for Salone in Milan this week, this month, next month, is really inviting participants to become aware of the present moment. And as you mentioned, their kind of own emotional landscape. Like, do you think this is for everyone, or are there like certain people who need this more than others? Like, what are you evoking? Like, what was the original thesis?
It's really for humanity. It's for everyone. It's so planned. And I would, studying strategic design management, and you always have your target groups working very long for branding and always have no clear. But for me, it's really like we're all together collectively in this like hyper digitalized world. And as long as I think we're already cyborgs. So I'm like, yeah, what is actually the human in us? And I think it's the vulnerability. And from the little kid to the very old person, everybody is connecting through vulnerability. And I think when you say the lowest level of trust, also, once you open up, you give yourself some time, and you were those people together in this bubble. And it's kind of a rebirth of like, oh yeah, wow, I'm here. And as I said before too, like strangers become maybe softer, or you respect each other, or you start actually to look at each other or talk. You can observe all those things, and I'm so certain that it's for everyone, because I showed it in so many places already, and no matter where on the planet, the reactions are very much the same, and they're very grateful. And yeah, people share with me a lot of stories, and often they come back from childhood, which is very important. Like it's super interesting. It's like a whole research project on itself, but I'm like realizing it more.
Yeah.
And usually I told you this before too. I was like, oh, I don't do a project so long. Like I want to go on to the next one. But then I realized, no, actually it's the more we go, the more the zeitgeist really understands. And I get more and more resonance for it. And right now it's for 3 months installed on a Swiss mountain, where you also have to you have to make a decision. I actually go on this mountain, and it's a 45-minute gondola ride and everything.
Awesome.
And then you just go into this bubble. But it's very successful right now. And for me, it's strange, because usually I was always with this bubble and people always talk to me. And now it's there and I'm not there anymore. So I'm like, whoa, what's happening? I want to hear what people say. But more because it's just like people are emotional after this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine that the physical place where it is, like the mall in Tashkent versus I think that's Uzbekistan, versus like the mountaintop in Switzerland, those also evoke different experiences when someone enters into or exits from this bubble.
100%. And that's also interesting with your background, like, because I was very intrigued by, and I also think, spirituality and all these things become much more relevant in the time we are, because we're kind of lost. And I think it gives the patterns of this constructed, planet patterns and everything. They give throughout history, they also give some sort of a guidance.
Yes.
I think that's more and more people seek that, or also the connection to nature in general, like tree hugging becomes huge or is already huge. And 10 years ago, I would have said, oh, such a spiritual, whatever. But I think in this time, it's really like, we seek the natural, we seek the cycles, we seek the, not everything can bloom all the time. Like we also have to go inwards and then to fly again, or in this groundedness. So the mountain is really much same as in nature. You can go hiking, but you can take pictures and it's great, but to really feel it, you need to maybe sit on a bench or on a stone and like let yourself actually look around and feel.
And in all your senses.
Sensations. Yeah. And that was very intriguing for me to show it on a mountain. It's inside the building because of the weather in the winter. But I tried to, with projections and everything, I tried to bring in nature in that way. And then the nature also within us, that's maybe also back to your other question, is it for whom is it? Like it's for everyone, because breath is our compass. And I call it breathe with me and this thing is breathing like slowly, because it grounds us, it's a guide, but it makes us all the same, even though everybody of us breathe differently. That's a given, that's apparently a reality, but yeah.
No, but it's so fascinating. You seem to believe, Annabelle, somehow like the rebirth of the real, or the real just in general, is pro-human.
Yes.
That's what I seem to be getting from you. In the mid 21st century and looking ahead, like what's the impact of something, of rebirthing a real that is pro-human while at the same time not anti-tech? Sorry, I know these are really light questions.
I don't know this answer. What do you think?
Wow, that's funny. It's not me who's being interviewed.
I think you framed this question.
What do you hope the impact is?
That we're more careful with each other. And it sounds very naive, because I know I also grew up in a world full of war and everything. And I'm like, yeah, humans are just sometimes really not nice. And I guess we want that. And do we want to be alive? But no, I think that we believe in good creations and find more respect for our balance, and also work and money. It's very crazy to say in this time, but I think there's a shift, like other priorities, and health. I mean, I read this crazy report once from the UN that said, and that was like maybe 3 years ago, that said in 2030 the biggest death rate is suicide. And I'm like, wow. And since ever, I'm very interested also, like you say, you're also like very informed about trauma and everything, and same for me. And you can see it everywhere, like mental health, and there's all this new declared issues. You're having mental health conditions and everything. And I'm like, yeah, I think also everybody has something, and we're collectively suffering.
Yeah.
We're not well. So
I agree with that.
And I also think, design and art, or especially design, I was really also at the point where I felt we don't need a new chair. Like I'm all for design, and it has a lot of power, but there's so many, like also with sustainability, what materials do you choose? Like what's the longevity of this thing? But also, what does it do to us? Is it just for identity, or is it really to bring some benefit in our rituals, in our daily journey, in how we're going through life? And maybe we need those help things. I haven't thought about this so much, because I also think sounds maybe very naive, or through pink glasses, like, we have, but I think we need spaces for more offline, or where it becomes very irrelevant for a moment.
I love that idea, actually. I don't think it sounds naive. I think it sounds humanistic at the end of the day. And you're doing it. I mean, that's the cool thing. Obviously, people are responding. As you said, there's resonance.
Yeah.
As we kind of think about coming to the end, I want to look ahead, Annabelle, to your upcoming project, as I alluded to in April, design Milan Design Week, which is Salone in Milan, Italy, will happen. It's kind of like a little art ball in its own way, a little New York City Design Week in its own way, but it's basically the big furniture and interiors fair that happens in Milan every year, but it's become kind of a cultural phenomenon as well. And you're actually doing something there, which I thought was kind of amazing because I actually didn't know that you were titling it this until after we had already decided on the name of this episode, which is really, really crazy to me. But it's the Renaissance of the Real.
Yeah.
I don't know how that didn't come up, but it didn't. But you're doing this with USM, like the modular, beautiful Swiss furniture company, and Snohetta, which is one of the world's largest construction design build firms. And I guess this is exploring further kind of what's behind you, the breathing. Tell us more, just briefly, about how you got to this renaissance of the real. What does that mean? And why that?
Well, we also coming back to USM, I quickly have to say maybe, yeah, they had their 60th anniversary, and the USM is a modular system that's all very innovative and intelligent through their membrane, the ball joint that's round. And I already did something with them during the first launch of Breathe With Me at WSA in New York City for New York City by Design. But the USM was on its own and the bubble was on its own, and we had some day beds from USM inside the bubble, but there was this whole conversation going on, like, how is this going together? Like USM is very like this, like geometric and rigid and plain, like simplified. It's not simple, but it's decluttered, like Swiss design.
It's actually beautiful, beautiful design.
Yeah. No, it's perfect. But and I was also commissioned to do Swiss design, and my bubble is also very decluttered. So they go together. There's not a million of patterns or something. It's very here. That's the gesture, and it functions, and it's very intelligent, and there's a lot of longevity in it. And for me, that was, as a Swiss person too, growing up with USM also was something very strong, because USMs are handled with so much care. They're going through generations. They live in context, like we have trends of interiors, and they're still there, and they're always fitting. They're going from my parents to me to my, I don't know, somebody else later, like this. It's adapting in context. And for me, this ball joint, or like something very organic like my bubble too, is also like the reality, fluid. It's round, it needs to deform through the time, like very conceptually, and then the whole construction is holding this. And it gives a stability which we need too. So it's never just one or the other. It's always a circle, and like something that frames it. So this was for me conceptually very, very interesting. Then we went on, and Snohetta came to it. We were in talks, and they took on like the charge to make this holding space with the USM, and I pressed my breathing fluid huge ball joint in it. And we had all these discussions about like the algorithms, the AI. I said 100 million times like how flat everything is, how and everything is kind of perfect also with the USM, but it's a real construction. It comes with wisdom, it comes with a lot of research, it comes from history, and I think all these things are also very important to take on. It's very reliable, and and then the bubble as a grounding thing is like this place for rebirth, like for grounding. And then whether that's just a thought you have, like something new, or maybe you have a little bit more energy after that and you go out, or you connect differently with people, you're maybe a little bit more slowed down and see things a bit different. And I think, and it's this holding space, and and then, and with the discernment again, I think once you have this moment and you were actually in there and not just looking at pictures, you really have to go, then you hopefully can see the reality a bit different again, whatever that is, and how long it takes, I don't know. or lasts, not take. Yeah, how
Well,
long it takes and how long it lasts.
I love that. Well, let's that leads us very naturally to the last question, because maybe someone's going to have to stay in there for a long time, because the last question is always, what's your greatest hope for the future of what's real in, let's call it 25 years, so like right around 2050?
I hope for a more collective realness of like, that we have. I hope 25 years is also very long, I have to say.
And it goes like this somehow,
Yeah,
weirdly.
I know, but I'm not thinking that far. No, but for like maybe 5 years, I hope that I have a much more, many more bubbles, like that are in very different places that are all not good for our nervous system, but where we actually can bring people in and have more of this like check-ins on reality
Mm,
or on ourselves, mostly first. And I hope we find tools for that through design and art
I love
and
that.
community, because people feel it actually does something
Mm.
positive. Yeah. Difficult question.
But it's a beautiful answer. Annabelle Schneider, thank you so much for joining us on Future of XYZ on a very broad, far-ranging topic that you covered beautifully.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
For everyone watching, you can listen anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. For anyone listening, you can watch on YouTube. I would highly recommend watching this one because you can see some of Annabelle's bubble action behind her. Please follow us. Both IF Design, our presenting sponsor, as well as Future of XYZ on LinkedIn and Instagram. And we will look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks' time. Annabelle, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. Ciao.